Hello YouTube, this is William. I'm going to try to explain the steps that I go through mentally a lot of times. Sometimes I put it on paper, but when I'm doing a design or a knife design that's in R&D and I have a certain deal in mind, task, then these are the steps and the things that I focus on when I'm designing a knife. This is how I do it. This is not how I'd say the majority of the knife world does it, but this is my process. So these are the things in the boxes that I'm looking for when I'm designing a knife. Okay, and I hope you guys can hear me over the fans and the air conditioning. There's no way that you could be out here without that. As a matter of fact, I have to shut the grind room down at about noon. Our temperatures right now, just ambient, is over 100. Heat index, we're pushing 110, 112. So equipment just fails at that point. I fail at that point. It's too hot to even concentrate. So anyway, I thought maybe I'd get in here and I would do a video and explain. Perhaps it will help you choosing a knife in the future, or just in your knife selection. It may save you some money. So you may look at a knife and say, wow, that's cool. But then if you go through the functionality of that knife, then perhaps it doesn't meet the need that you're looking for. Okay? So anyway, got my whiteboard, and please, my handwriting is atrocious. My spelling is atrocious, but at least maybe you can get the general gist of it. And please don't need to comment on my handwriting skills and spelling, because I already know. So anyway, all right. So basically, and I hope you guys can see this, but the basic function of a knife, of any knife, there's some criteria that I look for in design, and the basic criteria is ease of sharpening. If you can't easily sharpen it, then what good is it? And I don't care how many curves it's got, I don't care how many different multi-grinds it has. If you can't sharpen it easily, then you're not going to use it. Okay, you're going to put it in a drawer somewhere, and that's where it's going to stay. Okay, so even though my designs look just complicated, just say that, they're actually not. It's just a little bit of trial and error, a couple, 3 times, and you'll get the sharpening down. Matter of fact, the designs is very intuitive, because most of the time it starts with a Scandi, and if you just follow that same Scandi all the way through, it actually assists you in sharpening the knife. So if you can sharpen a Scandi, which means that you can just lay the knife down on a stone and pretend that this is a stone. If you just lay it down on the Scandi and just follow the Scandi all the way through, it's actually helpful. Instead of trying to figure out angles on sabers and all this other stuff, they may have a 22, a 15, a 18. There may be all kinds of different angles on that edge grind. But with mine, I usually start with a Scandi on the multi-grinds. And if you just find that Scandi, just play it on the stone, and when it stops rocking, that's the Scandi. Just follow it all the way through. That's the bevel on everything. Sabers, full flats that marry into a Scandi, everything is that same angle. Okay? So in other words, if it has a Scandi on it, that's the same angle all the way through, no matter what the secondary or third or fourth grind is. Okay? So it's very intuitive. All right? So that's ease of sharpening. Control. If you don't control that knife, then it's going to hurt you. And depending on the size of the knife, it could hurt you really bad. Okay? So if you don't have complete control of that knife, then I would run from it. Okay? A lot of people look at the knives and they're all shiny and polished and all this other stuff. They're slicker than owl snot. Okay? And so I don't do polished handles, especially my car. They're too slick. They'll hurt you bad. Okay? They'll slide up on the hand. They'll twist around in your hand. I don't do broomstick handles either, the round handles that are perfectly round, because they twist and turn in your hand. There's no control. If you don't control a knife, like I said, you're gonna get hurt. Okay? So anyway, that's another major issue when I'm designing a knife. Comfort. If it's not comfortable to use, you're gonna put it in a drawer or not use it. I want my knives to be used. Okay, so that's another thing when using a knife. Not only is comfort on the handle, but it's also the balance of the knife. If it's blade heavy and you don't want a chopper, then you're trying to do just intricate bushcraft tasks, whittling, carving, campcraft type stuff, and you're not going to do a lot of chopping, you don't want a blade heavy knife, because it's gonna wear out your muscles in your arm trying to compensate for that blade heavy. So you want a well balanced knife. Okay, so many of my large bladed knives has a balance point up on the blade somewhere to where you can grab it and have a balanced knife. But if you want a chopper, you can get out on the end and it's got blade heavy. Okay, so comfort deals with a lot more than just blade or handle shape. Okay, balance has a lot to do with that as well. Versatile. If I'm going to design a fillet knife, I want that fillet knife to do several things. I want it to be able to do feathers. I want it, feather sticks. I want it to be able to do some light wood carving, some light firecraft. I want it to do a bunch of things. So why have a knife? If you got a pack and you got it full of knives because you're going to be fishing, hunting, camping, you're going to be carving on camp, you're going to have a pack full of knives. Why not have a knife that'll do 3 or 4 different things well, that'll take care of all that room? And so you can put other things in there, like a pillow. Okay, put little comfort items in there. All right, so versatility. I look for versatility in a knife design. That's why my designs has multi-grinds, because we'll get into that portion here in a little bit. But I want versatility. Edge maintenance. Okay, that goes with ease of sharpening. I should have just said maintenance. But do you want to spend a lot of time waxing a blade? Are you in a wet environment? Are you in a an environment to where you don't want to be taking care of a knife all the time? So maintaining that knife, I don't want a lot of holes in the handle that's going to get junk and gunk and everything in there if it's going to be used in some nasties, like a sportsman's knife that's going to be filleting fish, it's going to be processing game. I don't want a lot of crooks and crannies and things in there that you have to get in there and clean up. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, maintaining the knife. All right, so those are the basic things that I'm looking for. All right, so when it comes to design, these are the questions that I ask. What is its intended task? Okay, am I going to be using that knife to be doing what task? And I usually try to get 3 or 4 tasks. Is it going to be used for game process? Is it going to be used for kitchen prep? Is it going to be used for campcraft, firecraft? Is it going to be used for multiplicity of things? Again, I'm looking for versatility. So I'll list down the tasks that knife is going to be used for. So I'm going to say, okay, what am I going to use that tip for? Is it going to be for wood processing, carving, game prep? What's it going to be used for? I'll give you an example. Right now I'm doing a knife that's in R&D. And I've got, I think this is prototype D, okay? This was prototype B. So the procession or the progression of it is the length, the tip, right now we're on the tip. So this tip is pretty much the same as this tip, except for it has a little bit of a curve here. Okay, so the tip, I'm saying, I'm going to be using this tip for game processing, wood carving, camp chores, kitchen chores, that type of thing. So that's where this knife idea is headed. Okay, so right now on the tip, I want something that's going to do all of that do it well for everything. It's not going to excel at any one given task, but it's going to do a lot of things well. Okay, so this one, a curve, is great for game processing. It's not so great for kitchen craft. It's not so great for wood craft. That's the reason wood carving knives has a straight tip. Okay, and that's for getting in a precise carving, wood carving. But will it skin a game, okay? Well, with that drop down point like that, we're at this point, or at this point, we're at this stage of design and development. If you put it down and then you just see how you have control. So yes, you'll be able to control that, the depth of your cut, the thickness of your cut, and all of that with just that point. You don't need the rounded edge. Now the other thing is when you're trying to remove or separate that hide from the flesh and you're coming down, then many times that curve is beneficial for that. But that's not its primary task, okay? So there's give and take, there's compromise in every design. So you got to figure out what's more important to you. For this design, what's more important to me than a curved tip is the woodcraft and those tasks, okay? The kitchen prep, all right? So that's the reason I'm leaning toward the straight tip. It will still process the game, and it will still scan game, but it also does woodcraft and kitchen prep better than this curved tip, okay? So this design is going to have that type of tip. All right, middle part of the blade, and we're talking about this part of the blade. What is its intended task or task? Okay, are you going to be whittling? Are you going to be chopping vegetables? Are you going to be deboning, slicing? What are you going to be using that middle part for? And again, you're check marking those boxes for those tasks that you're trying to design this knife for. Because you don't use this part of the knife the same as you use this part or this part, okay? So you're trying to go down the blade and say, okay, for this design, what do I need at this portion? And for this knife, what's beneficial is that tooth, or that, see that faceted tooth right there? You're not only slicing this away, you're slicing this away, okay? So it's a 4-point slice, okay? So it assists you, and it helps you in carving, wood carving, vegetable prep. It helps you in every task that you're going to do. That tooth does. And until you use one like that, it's like a one serration. Then it's hard to explain. You just have to try it and use one. Okay. So the middle part of the blade should be, in most cases, different than the other two parts of the blade because it's used differently. All right. For this case, it's going to be used for slicing vegetables primarily. Secondary, game prep, and woodcraft. Okay, and many other things, but those are the primary things. All right. The back of the blade, this portion here, what are you going to be using that for? And again, control is the key, because the closer you're cutting to your hand, the better control you have. So if you're out here trying to do something on the tip, you don't have as much control as if you're right here. So these is where you're going to do the hard cuts, the difficult cuts, the taking away of a lot of material, and saying do pot hangers or tent stakes or something like that. So you're going to be up here on the edge here, slicing away, removing a lot of material. It's not going to be as precise as you would be on the tip, where you don't need as much pressure. Okay, so this portion here, I want something robust. I want a grind that's going to remove a lot of material. And in this case, we're going to be doing woodcraft, okay? We're going to be doing tent stakes, pot hangers, firecraft, that type of thing, all right? So I want something that's going to do that. So I've got a Scandi here, and a curve is what's going to benefit in that Scandi, because no matter which way I'm a-coming, I'm a-cutting, okay? So curves are like that. And the handle, again, I want something that's comfortable, something that you have control, something that's not going to slip in my hand. Again, I'm back to the basics now. I want control of that knife at all times, okay? Whether I'm up here, ripping that, I want to be able to hold on to the handle. I want to be able to hold on to the blade. I want control, complete control. The width here has been enough space to hold on to that, and I get up on that fine tip and do precise cuts. Okay, that's the reason scalpels a lot of times don't have a curve. Okay, so you can do those precise cuts. All right. Mm-hmm. So Another thing on blade, I don't have it on my board here, but I mean, do you want curves or straight edges or whatever? There's a lot of different thoughts on this, and many of the thoughts that you see on YouTube and elsewhere, books and things like that, most people are talking about one or two tasks that the knife design is doing. I'm 3, 4, 5 tasks that I'm trying to do those tasks well. So when you're talking about blade curves and all of that, then it kind of gets confusing. But straight blades, if you look at kitchen knives are best with straight portions. Okay, wood carving knives, actual detail carving knives, most of them have spade blades or sheet foot blades. That's what they're used for. It's because you have a very straight edge that you can plane wood, slice wood, and that tip is to where you can use that very tip to do very precise carving or cuts. Okay, so again, the blade shape, the shape and the edge shape should dictate what you need. Now, a very famous woodsman, let's call him that, Morris Kahansky, always said a curved blade is best. He's talking about bushcraft. Now, if you're going to do just pure bushcraft, you're not going to do anything else with it, he's absolutely correct. But if you want this knife to do many things, then just a curved blade is not always best. Okay, sometimes you may want to use this knife for food prep, and you want something that you can get down there and just chop. Because if you can't chop with a curved blade, because you're missing the vegetables, you have to slice it somehow. So again, that's something that you're going to have to figure out as far as when you're choosing a knife or designing a knife. What do I want that blade to do? All right. So again, you have to decide whether you want a straight portion, a curved portion, or what you want. So in my designs, many times I have, because you're not going to use the blade the same in all areas. The tip's going to be used for certain tasks, the middle's going to be used for certain tasks, and next to the handle or the back portion of the blade is going to be used for certain tasks. So I use a lot of times, I'll have a certain blade shape here, in this instance a curve to a flat. Sometimes I may use a flat to a curve. Okay, so it gives you very versatile blade. All right, okay. Thickness. Now, thickness is something that people confuse with durability. It's really, with today's steels, that's not really the case in some instances. For instance, you could have an 1/8 inch or a 3/32 3V blade, and it's going to be more durable and hold up better to side pressure than, say, 3/16 440 stainless. All right, because the steel properties and the molecular structure of that steel is going to be able to flex better in the 3V than it would be in, say, a 440. And I'm just giving examples here. All right, so the only key that I can see in the thickness of a blade and what it benefits you is separation. So if you're going to use this for batoning, and again, I am not an advocate of batoning. I think there's better tools for such as that. But if you want to do batoning for crafts like bow drills and things like that, splitting things down, very small stuff, then I see that there's a place for that. But creating a log cabin with a pocket knife or a knife is just ludicrous. We have gone too far in that direction, in my opinion. I think that there's a place and a time for it. And in a survival situation, there's no place and no time for batoning, because there's harmonics and vibration that happens in that blade when you're hitting on it, that it's going to find a weak spot and it's going to fail. It'll cause a slight fissure in a weak portion of that blade, and over time it may be the next hit, it may be the next month, it may be the next year, but that fissure is going to work all the way through the blade and it will fail. So if you like your knife, don't baton with it. Okay, if you want to baton a very thin piece of wood or a small piece of wood for like a hearth board or something like that, then use your hand. If you have to use a club or something, then no, don't do that. Use an axe, okay, or a froe. But if you can split the wood with your hand, beating it on it with your hand, then by all means do that, okay? All right, but the thickness of the blade, the only thing that it helps you with is that separation, because you're wanting a wedge. You want a wedge to split that material apart. So the thicker that blade is, then the better that wedge is going to be, okay? So that's the only benefit that I see or have found with thickness of blades in most cases, rule of thumb, okay? There are exceptions to every rule, all right? Okay, the length of the blade, again, when I first started designing or developing this idea, I used a sharp blade. And after use, I realized that I wanted this portion to be longer. So I'm at this stage now. So that length of blade has increased about a ½ inch, okay? So the length of the blade is going to be dictated by its task. So the task here, and the task here. Combining all of those tasks, always remembering control is a big function of that. I could have a 10-inch shelf knife here, okay? It would work great at shelf and kitchen prep. Not so good at wood crafting, okay? Now you could choke up on the blade, but then you have a problem with balance and all this other stuff. So you're trying to reach a happy medium between all of that. So you want a blade, a knife that's going to be well balanced. It's going to be long enough to do the task that you want it to do, and yet not be just something monstrosity that you're going to leave in a drawer somewhere, okay? So again, the task and the versatility of that knife is going to dictate the length of that blade and knife overall. Now, do you want a long handle? Some of my big choppers has a long handle for two-handed grip and also for changing the balance of the blade. So that's the purpose of the handle in a lot of cases. Sometimes it's a counterweight, okay? So to take care of a lot of the weight forward, all right? So length of the knife is going to be dictated by its functionality, again. Okay, the width of the blade. So you got to realize when you're a skinning knife, you want a wide blade so it helps you do the straight line cuts. But when you're doing wood carving and things like that, you want a very narrow blade that's going to allow you to do those twists and turns and intricate cuts, okay? So you want a very fine tip. But a fine tip is a weak tip. So you got to be careful with that. So, but if you're wanting a skinning blade, you want a wide blade that's going to assist doing the straight cuts. So how wide is that blade for your intended uses? That's something you got to ask yourself, all right? Now I don't have it up here, but edge angle has a lot to do with a knife design. Now if you're going to be using a knife that's going to be primarily used as a froe, then you want a convex edge, something that's robust, that's going to hold that edge and not flake out or chip out or when you're beating on it or whatever you're going to do. Okay, so you want a very thick convex edge, like an axe, all right? If you're going to do precision work, wood crafting, that type of thing, then and you're going to be removing a lot of material, then a Scandi edge is probably the best edge that you're going to find for that. If you want something that's got slicing ability, that's going to take care of those vegetables real easy, take care of the thick stuff. See how that portion is sliced through there without having to create a pinch point? That's the full flat portion of that. But if you go to this portion, see how wide it is? It's wanting to push things apart. So again, what is those tasks for the tip, the middle, and the back part of that blade intended to do? So that's going to dictate what kind of grind you have. That's the reason I like multiplicity grinds, or multiple grinds, is because I want this knife to do many things well. So I've got a very robust edge here, thick edge, for splitting apart some small kindling size wood, for removing a lot of material for feather sticks. And I got a real thin blade here for slicing powered wood carving, dust, and things like that, okay? So those grinds is going to dictate what you want to use that knife for. All right. So I hope this was beneficial. I know I'm hitting on some broad areas, and it's one of those things that you just have to try a knife, different types of knives, to figure out what best fits you and your needs. Okay. So until the next one, you guys get in the backyard with a little stick. Be sure to take a child with you, get the opportunity. Don't forget those cleaning Band-Aids and lots of knives. Catch you again soon.